You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. Happy Friday. Joined by the latest member of the PHNX family, the man who is begrudgingly joining us on this Friday. Hello, Anthony Gimino. How are you?
Here we are, just two dudes from PHNX Sports chatting about the Wildcats.
All right. Anthony, you've watched a lot of good football from the U of A over the years. You've watched a lot of bad football. You've watched some great defenses. You've watched some terrible offenses. You've run pretty much the gamut right here. You've seen a lot of different coaches. Well, let's just start out with the main thing. Year three, halfway through year three of Jed Fisch, if Dr. Anthony Gimino was to give a grade so far on how Jed Fisch has taken this program, what would Dr. Gimino put it at right there? PhD Gimino, that is.
Well, I think the professor would give him a solid B. Mm-hmm. I think he's done some things. The one thing, and this was after several years of Mike Stoops, that it was obvious he was able to take the program from, and I wrote this on multiple occasions. He took the program from point A to point B. He was not the guy who was going to take the program from point B to Pasadena.
Right. And
now, unfortunately, that doesn't even apply because the Rose Bowl is not even a thing anymore, and Arizona won't be in the Pac-12. So it's still too early to know if Jed Fisch is the guy. I think he's well on his way to get into point B. He's not there yet, because to get to point B, you have to be winning some ball games, or more ball games than they've won so far. But you can see the progress. We all know that. Is he going to be the guy who can take that extra step once he gets there? We don't know. But so far, not everybody, Kevin Sumlin, for example, can take that first step.
Right.
Rich Rod did. Mike Stoops did. John Makovic didn't. So I guess you're about, 50-50? So Jed Fisch is on the right side of the 50-50 call right now.
Where I'm at with Fisch is, and again, we're going to talk about the talent overhaul because that's obvious, and there's some good stuff there. Where I have some questions about Jed Fisch is still a little bit in the play calling decision making. I don't necessarily watch Arizona football games and say, that's some next level scheming right there on offense. With a guy like Rich Rod, granted, Rich Rod couldn't recruit, but you could tell within 5 minutes that, this guy gets it. He knows how to put people in the right spot.
Yeah, and he's still doing that.
And he is still doing that.
I'm not sure there's not a better coach in the country than Rich Rod of taking average to below average talent and making them winners.
Right.
He was that kind of guy who could take his players and beat you, and then take your players and beat you with his guys, because he was so good at scheming and is so good at scheming.
With Fisch, there's a couple things, and our good buddy John Schuster mentioned this to me, and I started paying attention to it, and it's right. Fisch to me makes
Well, are we supposed to listen to Schuster?
Hey, well, you guys both share the same mutual best friend, though, and you guys know him from totally different avenues. So again, you might know him from at home at times, but so that is a funny little background story. But Schuster, I thought, made a rare good point where he said, watching Jed Fisch's offense is kind of like the 2005 NFL version, in that if you're going to throw the ball on first down, you will always pass it on second if it's incomplete, or you will always run it on second down every single time, no matter what. And then when you get into overtime, you kind of play it safe. You don't really go for the wins right there. We saw that against USC right there. I thought they should have gone for 2. But again, that's probably nitpicking there a little bit. But you don't really see, I guess, maybe it's just because Rich Rod was so recent, but you don't really see, next level innovative play calling. But maybe that's just me picking nits right there.
Yeah, I mean, especially this year, I thought Arizona from Jed Fisch year 1 to year 2 made very clear improvements in terms of their big playability.
Right.
I remember looking at that chart and saying, "Oh wow, look at that graph. It's way higher than that first year chart."
Right.
This year, if I did that same chart, I don't think we'd see any improvement at all in terms of big playability and those 20 plus, 30 plus yardage kind of plays. So yeah, it's missing a little bit of that explosiveness. Some of it is, I think, Jed is just content, and probably rightly so, as I say this, to take what the defense gives him. And if the
Right.
defense is
Yeah.
going to make Arizona do that 15 play, 75-yard drive, good luck to Arizona, because we know with Jayden de Laura, chances are over 15 plays, he might make a killer mistake, either by taking a huge sack or throwing an interception or something like that. So that would be the plan. With Noah, he's making far less mistakes. So Arizona has a better chance of sustaining those drives.
Can we agree that no more trick plays? These trick plays never work. And I don't know that there's been one successful trick play during the Jed Fisch era. And if there has been, I apologize. The trick plays never work.
Not this year, right? I mean, can you think of one this year? And usually they come at really bad times. They put together 30, 40, 50 yards, and you're 2nd and 5, and you do a trick play, and now suddenly you're at 3rd and 12 again. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we can get rid of those or break them out. Sometimes you do that to set up something else, but that doesn't seem to be the case here.
Let's talk about the quarterback play a little bit, because you've covered some interesting quarterback situations over the year. But first, Shady Rays. Look at Mike Luke. Total dweeb, never going to be cool. But when I wear Shady Rays, there are moments when I have a hint of coolness. Yes, you look at Anthony Gimino, one of the dons of the Southwest, always cool. But he becomes the godfather then if he has the Shady Rays on. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out to the best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code PHNX for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people, and become a PHNX diehard. Anthony Gimino, the G-Dog, is here. You get the weekly newsletter. You get his write-ups. You get all kinds of cool merchandise. You get access to the Discord chat. No better time to become a PHNX diehard than right now. All right. I want to take you back to the quarterback, probably the most notable quarterback situation in U of A history, Keith Smith, Ortiz Jenkins. Mm-hmm. Keith Smith has a really good freshman year. Gets banged up, whatever you want to call it, his sophomore year. OJ takes over. OJ has, and this will sound bad, I don't mean it this way, kind of a flash in the pan freshman season where you start wondering, wow, could we have a Heisman candidate? It quickly becomes apparent though after that Keith Smith is the better quarterback. And Dick Tomey, again, became probably more like 70-30 as the years went on. Keith Smith, Ortiz Jenkins right there. At what point does it force a coach's hand where you're like, all right, we got to play this guy? Because I wonder if we're approaching that point with the Noah Fifita, Jayden de Laura situation right here.
Yeah, well, in the case of Keith and OJ, Tomey brought them in after the 97 season and said, both of you are going to compete. You're going to compete. Nobody's guaranteed any playing time at all. You're going to compete for the job, and if you don't like it, you can leave. And they both decided to stay and compete.
Right.
So I think there was, and it worked. Obviously, it worked. They went 12-1. Everybody talked. OJ's greatest moment is the leap by the lake, the flip into the end zone to beat Washington. What people often forget is that Keith came in and played quarterback on that drive for at least one play, and he threw like a 20-yard pass to OJ. So even that two quarterback system worked. Was it rare? Was it unusual? Yeah, probably so. But both quarterbacks went into that exactly knowing the situation, and Dick Tomey gave them an out, and they both decided to stay and compete with each other. Now, this situation is a little bit different. I know you're on Team Noah. I would love to buy the Team Noah t-shirt. I'm on Team Noah all the way. I don't have, it's not my job, my salary on the line like it is for Jed Fisch's. So it's really easy for me to say, let's go with Noah. But I think, and you've been breaking it down all week with Shear and Jody and Ben White, you've gone through the stats and you've gone through the plays and all those kind of things. I'm just super comfortable with Noah. And I think Jed has left himself just enough of an out that,
right. I agree.
that Noah can start on Saturday. And then if something maybe, and clearly, and he mentioned this in his Thursday press conference, that JDL will be available. He could come in off the bench if he had to. If Noah started, something went bad, or Noah's tweaks an ankle, whatever, he'll be available. I'd kind of like to, I kind of hope it turns out that way because I want to see more Noah. And then if Noah does, what happens now? If Noah starts, say they beat Washington State.
Right.
You got the bye. Well, you got to go. You got to stick with them, right?
At that point, and again, we both know the fan base here pretty well. I will say this: at that point, I think you really start getting some people to start questioning you. If Noah Fifita goes in there, plays well, beats Washington State after these two performances, where I thought he was good enough against Washington, not great, missed some throws, bad pick. USC, I thought overall, outside of the one interception and the missed pass, I thought he was fantastic. But if he plays really well against Washington State and they somehow win, you go into the bye week and then start JDL, at some point, I think you're going to have a lot of fans that are going to really start questioning some of your decision-making when it comes to the most obvious position on the field.
Yeah, and I'm not, everybody always says you can't lose your job because of injury.
That's all crap. That's not true.
Why not? It's a phrase that people say, but they don't even think it through. Now, would it be fair? I mean, it would kind of suck for JDL to get hurt. Noah takes over and, well, that's it. Sorry, you're not going to be starting anymore. But, if you were, frankly, if you were better, that wouldn't happen. And
so nail on the head.
Maybe
go ahead. Sorry.
Maybe Fisch is just trying to be really fair to Jaden. Okay, let's play it the other way. JDL starts at Washington State. Now I think Jed may be playing with, okay, it may not have been totally fair that Jaden would never get another opportunity again. Let's see what he does. He knows the bar has been raised. Can JDL come up into the bar that Noah has set the last couple games? Give him that chance. That would be fair to him. Right. If he can't do it, you've got the bye week. You can make the change. If he can do it, all the better for your team.
I think the problem watching JDL this year, though, is that the offense has looked totally scattershot when he's been in there this entire season. The thing with Noah is when Noah has an easy pass in front of him for 10 yards or an easy first down where he can run, he takes it. With Jaden DeLora, especially in that Stanford game, it feels like he runs around for 40 yards, even when he's not being pressured, and then chucks it out of bounds or throws it deep. It feels very disjointed. Whereas when Noah Fifita's in there, even though he's a freshman and the other guy's a fourth-year junior, it feels like the offense has far more of a sense of purpose right there. And I think I'll put it to you like this. It's more aesthetically pleasing, Anthony. How about that?
Well, I just get a overwhelming sense of calm. Everything is going to be all right.
Yes.
Which you don't get from Jaden DeLore because he is running around and scrambling. And it's ironic that he gets hurt on the very play where he could have avoided all that just by getting rid of the ball sooner.
Right.
Or what JDL really doesn't do, he doesn't climb the pocket. He gets pressure and he retreats. Where Noah gets pressure, he steps up. Now that's going to open up the field and give him that opportunity. He's not necessarily the runner JDL can be when he wants to be, but Noah also has been really smart with when he chooses to run, when he chooses to slide, when he chooses to get out of bounds, or when he chooses to kind of go head first and get that little extra yardage, knowing he needs that particular yardage.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree on that. And he's got a connection with the receivers. And again, I'm not saying that JDL doesn't, but you look at Teteroa McMillan, for example. You were talking about him being one of those unicorns stepping on campus here. You can just tell that they have a synergy with each other. They have an understanding with each other that I'm not saying that JDL doesn't, but you can clearly tell that they have played a lot of football together, Noah Fifita and T-Mac.
Yeah, and it's a really great connection. Yeah, it's a sixth sense kind of thing where Noah knows exactly where T-Mac's going to go, and T-Mac's going to know exactly where to be because he knows where Noah wants to put it. And it's another consideration, which, I know you're super tuned in, you got your sources. So, I mean, when you get into this quarterback kind of controversy debate, it's not a small thing to factor in how does the team feel? And that's
I'll put it to you like this.
That's a little bit, I think you would say that maybe the majority of the team is kind of on Team Noah as well. I don't know that, but I think that's a consideration too. The team, you can't fool the players. They're there at practice every day. They're playing in the game. They know who gives them a better chance to win. And if you stick with the wrong guy, then you're not only hurting the team, you're losing the team.
I've got a historical question for Mr. Anthony Gimino, but first, DraftKings. The NFL season is going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking up new customers with an offer that's even stronger. Here's the deal: put down $5 and put down $5 on any game, and you can score $200 instantly in bonus bets. All right, here's the deal. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, licensing partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 186 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.com, DraftKings.com/football terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gambling resources. Okay. Noah Fifita. I've stood next to Noah Fifita many a time. I am 5'8.5", and I will always take that extra half inch right there. Always take it. I'm taller than Noah Fifita. I don't know in Power 5, and I brought this up with Jody yesterday, and this is definitely an AG question. I cannot think of a traditional drop back quarterback who was 5'8" or below in college football history. There was a traditional quarterback, not a Jamel Holloway or I can't think of one, Anthony. Maybe I'm missing it, but I can't think of one.
Yeah, you know what? Keith Smith was not. The Arizona listed him at 5'11", I believe. He was not 5'11". Now, I am not blessed to be as tall as Mike Luke, which is sad. but I could stand next to Keith Smith, and he was just this much taller than me. I mean, if Keith was 5'8", I'd be shocked. And honestly, I don't believe he was.
If Keith was 5'8", you think he was?
I don't even think he was 5'8". I'm sure he would say he was or is, but I don't think he was.
You think so? You think Keith Smith was like 5'7"?
Yeah, I kind of do, to be honest.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Keith was not he was not a traditional drop back quarterback, but he could. I mean, he could stand there and deliver. He certainly had the arm, and of course, a great runner. But yeah, I mean, to your point, those quarterbacks don't exist.
Yeah,
God, and Arizona's had their share of short quarterbacks over the years, right?
Very, very much.
Starting with, I mean, if you want to go just in the Pac-10 years, Tom Tunnicliffe was not a big dude. You know, he was probably 6 foot even. And again, these are the heights that the school lists him as. Then you go, you know, Tommy's first quarterback, Bobby Waters, the transfer from SMU, you know, probably again pushing 6 feet at best. Then you go Ronnie Veal, George Malaulu he was probably a legit 6, but not much more.
Yeah.
You got from there, you go to Dan White, who was 6'4". I mean,
but his release point made him 5'7", though.
He got hit a lot, so you know he might not have ended up at 6'4". But yeah, certainly a lot of short Arizona quarterbacks over the years, which I guess explains Arizona's lack of success with quarterbacks in the NFL.
All right, you're a buddy of Dwayne Aquina. This is true, is it not?
Sure, I could. Want me to get him on the phone? Get him on the phone.
No, we'll take your word for it.
Okay.
How much of this defense, because we got to be honest here, this defense is night and day different than, again, it's not the Desert Swarm, obviously not. But this defense from last year, where I thought it was one of the most disgusting displays of defense that I've seen at Arizona, and that's saying a lot because there's been a lot of bad defenses here in recent years, to this year where not only is it competent, I think you could start to make the case that it's above average right there. How much of that is personnel? How much of that is bringing in the wizard that is Dwayne Aquina right there, Anthony Gimino?
Yeah, I think the super easy answer is they've got better players.
Yeah.
You know, you can't hide that. They've got better players. That's going to help. But I'm not going to minimize the impact that Dwayne Aquina can have. I mean, to me, again, I have not scouted all the other secondary coaches, DB coaches in the country. If there's 2 better than Dwayne Aquina, I'd be shocked. I mean, that's just his record. He's got 3 Thorpe Award winners, like 14 All-Americans, 40 some guys who have played in the NFL.
His resume is as good as it gets. It is.
That is. There's nobody that has a better resume. I mean, back in the day when, you know, Nick Saban was really coaching DBs in addition to being head coach, you might say Nick Saban.
True.
But I'm going with Dwayne Aquina. And, you look
Mark Stoops might have had something to say about Mark Stoops had a lot of good
a great resume, an absolutely fantastic resume. But you just look at Dwayne Aquina at, what is he, 70 years old? Sorry, off the top of my head, I don't know. He's got the same energy he did when he arrived in Tucson in 1987 and helped Chuck Cecil to an All-American season.
Right.
I mean,
it is funny, though, off topic. All those Thorpe Award winners are not the one, according to Anthony Gimino, that he considers the gold standard at cornerback. This is true, Anthony.
This is true. Chris McAllister. I mean, we can count Chris among his All-Americans and his NFL guys and Pro Bowlers, right? Chris went to 1 Pro Bowl, if I'm correct. You should know this.
1 All-Pro for sure, but he was All-Pro as well. So it really, for sure.
Okay, which is way better than Pro Bowl, but
correct.
Yeah, Chris is still the standard.
Yeah, which is amazing to think about. Now, look at this defensive backfield here. And I thought against SC, they had a really nice game plan. You obviously dropped a lot of guys into coverage. But one player I'm very curious to see how he continues to progress, because he looks a little bit different in the out of all the corners, is Ephesians Prysock. Brian J. Peterson put out there that, he's allowing less than 50% of the completions in his direction. Only been targeted 25 times this year. Prysock's got a little bit of that next level feel to him, and that he's about 6'2" or 6'3", moves pretty well. If you're looking at those defensive backs, he's the one, Anthony, that stands out to me.
Yeah, just physically, and that length is super rare at Arizona. Even in some of in the Desert Swarm days, you were talking about a bunch of JC transfers who were 5'10"-ish, and they got the job done, but corner wasn't necessarily the strength of those teams. So to see a guy,
a lot of Daryl
Morrison, who was a really good player, obviously he played in the NFL in his kid's tearing it up at Notre Dame right now. But
Right.
but to get this lean 6'3" guy is it's not something we've seen, Mike. You know that. You know, often around here the game's been lost in warmups. Just on
Because even the good
physicality of the
even
two
the good
teams.
right, even the good cornerbacks, and again, there's been so many good ones. You're obviously your Antoine Kazons and stuff like that. But even the good ones always feel like they're Michael Jolivet. That they're like 5'8.5", but they're real spunky, and they're, these guys just look the part a little bit more. And I think Prysock is right on there. Now, I want to talk to you about the defensive line, because that to me was the biggest question mark going into the season. Last year's team couldn't generate any pass rush whatsoever, and it also highlighted by giving up a lot of rushing yards as well. You've got a trio or a troika at that defensive end position right now, where you've got Taylor Upshaw, which obviously from Michigan, Dion said he didn't want him at Colorado. Arizona will gladly take him. Has had 5 sacks this year. Then Isaiah Ward, who is in his second year, he's had a nice little year, a couple sacks. Deuce Davis came alive as well this past game. There, and then you look on the interior, Big Bill Norton, Tai Uiagalelei, Tyler Manoa, Tia Savea. This defensive line looks the part, Anthony. And I can't remember the last time the defensive line looked the part.
Yeah, it was. Well, you know when it was. It was the Brooks Reed, Ricky Elmore line.
Yep.
But
DeAndre Reed, Earl Mitchell.
Yeah. Since then, we've lived through, and no disrespect whatsoever to Parker Zellers, because we like Parker Zeller. And he played pretty darn well. I'll qualify that. He played pretty darn well at being a 235-pound defensive tackle, nose guard. Thanks, Fritz Rod. I remember. I remember Scooby telling me, like, can you imagine? And this was in Scooby talk. Is like, can you imagine what my stats would have been if I had a nose guard who was bigger than I was? Those guys are supposed to keep the blockers off of guys like Scooby. But, Scooby was bigger than his nose guard, and somehow he still found a way to make a bunch of plays. But that's the kind of stuff, Rich Rod's really bad joke, kind of like you and your Crete joke. His really bad joke back in the day was always, we make up for our lack of size with our lack of speed, which was funny because it was kind of true.
But he was embracing it.
I know he kind of was, right? But again, we'll give Jed the credits. He's gone out, and these days, if you attack the portal and you do it right, and you're strategic, and you've got a keen eye, year to year, it can be night and day. You don't have to wait 4 years for an offensive lineman to develop, or a 300-pound defensive tackle to develop. You just go get one.
Jay, let me ask you this. I wanted to ask you about Jacob Manu. He's obviously a tackling machine. You covered a lot of tackling machines, obviously. One guy that always comes to mind when I think of guys that compiled a ton of tackles was Marcus Bell. What is Jacob Manu's upside in your opinion? Can he be somebody that is more than just a tackle guy, but can get those tackles closer to the line of scrimmage? Can he be a real difference maker out there? What kind of linebacker do you see him being for this next 2.5 years, AG?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that he's going to be around for 2.5 years. I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily see him as an all-conference guy. But I think we're going to look up after 4 years and see he's got 500 tackles.
Right.
I think the athletic profile kind of, limits him in a way. But this is totally the kind of guy Arizona always has success with.
Right. For sure.
The guy that the USCs of the world thought, no, we're not even going to look at you. You don't fit our criteria. Arizona, and from even Larry Smith and certainly Dick Tomey, looked beyond that And if linebacker, Scooby didn't have the greatest athletic profile either, as we could see, but he was able to do what he did, I think, because he saw the game really well. He thought the game really well. And if you're a linebacker, maybe you don't have the blazing 4.4 speed, but if you can process the play at 0.3 seconds faster than somebody else, you make up for it. And I think Arizona often has had that kind of linebacker. They haven't had Justin Flo. I mean, that's another guy, like, he's in an Arizona uniform, really? But Manu is more the traditional, little spunky, undersized, but get it done. And I think just because of the way he plays and the way he's always around the ball, he's going to, he's already kind of a fan favorite. And that's the other thing. I've really watching how these guys play defense. Like I've mentioned it before, swarm is like a sacred word to me. So I'm very careful how I use that. So I'm not going to say they're like swarming all the time, but they tackle and run to the ball with intent. Is that a good way to put it? I mean, they're not just like bringing the guy down. They are forcefully and with a little bit of ill intent, bringing ball carriers to a stop. I do believe
in ways Anthony likes lists. Anthony likes lists, and I like lists as well. And so I am going to say that I do believe, before we move on to some basketball, that I do believe this 2022 recruiting class is going to go down as the second best class in school history. If you just look at players that went on to the NFL, what they did. Here's some of the guys just to keep an eye on. T-Mac. We don't need to really bring him. We already know what T-Mac is. Jonas Savanea. We already know what Jonas Savanea is. Jacob Manu, Jacob Cowing, Jonah Coleman, Tai Uiagalelei, Russell Davis, Isaiah Ward, Wendell Moe. These are all, and Ephesians Prysock, Takario Davis. These are difference makers of the highest, and there's probably going to be, we already know T-Mac's an NFL player and could easily be a first-round pick. Jonas Savanea the same way. This class could easily have 5 or 6 NFL players in it by the time it's done, which is rare air for Arizona.
Yeah. So are you backing off saying this is the best class in Arizona history?
Yes, Anthony, I am backing off. I will let you tell the best class right there.
Well,
although I will say from an NFL perspective, just real quick, and then you got the floor. I will say from an NFL perspective, this could turn out to be the best one. That's all.
You might not be wrong. You might not be wrong about that at all. And I will be writing about this maybe even next week about the best class. Woohoo! Test teaser. That's just a little tease there for everyone.
Right.
But, the best class, and again, it's so classic Arizona because it was a nothing class, in terms of the ranking.
Right.
Back then, I'm sorry, we didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have 24/7 sports. Sorry. But we did have Super Prep magazine, and Super Prep was the gold standard. And I've still got, right here in my little home office, I've still got the old run of Super Prep magazines from like 85 through 2000, early 2000s, whenever they really stopped printing magazines.
Lemming?
But the 1990 Arizona class was ranked 6th in the Pac-10. Just 6th, just average. I don't even know if they ranked them nationally back then, but no big deal. Just your average boring Arizona class. But it had a College Football Hall of Famer, Rob Waldrop. It had 2 specialists who won. I'm trying to remember all this. So you had All-Americans. You had Tony Bowie. You had Steve McLaughlin, National Award winner. You had Josh Miller, who was the best punter in the country. You had Sean Harris. You had really probably the biggest kid in that class in terms of rankings, and he was well up there. Of course, he was one of Arizona's biggest catches ever. Was Mike Chaska.
Mike Chaska,
Local
Saguaro High
kid,
School,
offensive lineman, could have gone anywhere. Comes here,
parade All-American.
Yeah, he flashes, gets hurt, comes back, flashes some talent again, gets hurt, and eventually he had to retire from football before his college career was done. So that's a case of it didn't really work out. But some of the other guys, Mike Skurlock from Choya, very good Pac-10 player, goes on to play in the NFL. So I've done the math at some point. I think they had maybe like 9 NFL guys. So you had like 4 All-Americans, college football Hall of Famer, and you got like 17 starters out of that class. And if you hit like on 17 of 22 guys, that's a very, very high level. And that was the foundation for what happened. The 1990 class was the foundation for what happened in 1992 after the Miami loss, when they run off 5 wins in a row and beat Washington. Right. So if you're following that timeline, of course, the 91 class, Arizona built on that with Teddy Bruschi and Brandon Sanders. So they built on the 90 class, and it took about 2.5 years for it to fully show up on the field. Arizona's only at 1.5 years from the 2022 class. So, Luke, if you want to make the case that next year is going to be the big breakthrough year, you can point to that.
I will be interested to see as far as the NFL talent, though. I do think 2022 is going to eclipse them on NFL talent, though. I don't know that it's going to eclipse them because, like you're talking rare when you're talking about Rob Waldrop right there. But again, I think Sabanea is probably.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, what I was going to say was, that particular class did have a bunch of NFL guys, but they were like guys who played in the NFL for like 4 or 5 years and then were out.
They were Mike Skurlock types, Tony Bowie.
God bless them. Right. Yeah, Sean Harris. Those are guys who were solid NFL players for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and for whatever reason, injuries or just getting eclipsed by somebody else, they didn't stick around and have that 10, 12-year career. This group, as you say, could very well have those, at least a couple of those kind of guys.
You got a guy in T-Mac that I think, barring injuries, probably, I've always felt Dennis Northcutt was the best receiver in school history. T-Mac, barring injuries, going to leave here as the best receiver in school history. I'd be pretty surprised. I think, I think Sabanea has got a chance there as well. Then we didn't even talk about guys, like I said, Fifita, Prysock, Manu, a lot of different dudes like that. Let me ask you this. For the DraftKings pick of the week, do you like Arizona to cover, or do you like Washington State? Or no, do you like Washington State to cover or Arizona with the what do you like this week?
Definitely Arizona there, Mike. They've been they're a great cover team. They've been a great cover team all year.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm backing the trend, but I don't think I don't think the Vegas people, I don't think the line has really caught up to Arizona. So until it does, I will be taking. I'd take Arizona as an underdog all day.
Does that change if Jaden Delora is the starting quarterback?
No, it really doesn't.
Okay. All right. Now, Anthony, I want to talk to you a little bit right here about, so that's our DraftKings pick of the week before we sign off. Tommy Lloyd, Arizona's pick to win the conference this year. Sean Miller, and I always say this, Sean Miller, the best thing that I think Sean Miller can do, and this can't be underrated, is that he turned Arizona into a 2-coach school. I know that Fred Snowden was here. I know he did some very good things, but I'm just talking about in the modern era, Sean Miller showed after Lute Olson that you could win big here. I know they didn't make the Final Four, but a lot of top 10 teams, a lot of Elite Eights, number 1 seeds, you get it. Excuse me. But it didn't feel like Arizona basketball to me. It never felt like Arizona basketball. When Lute was here, that was obviously, it was open, it was fun, it was friendly. And even though Lute could be irascible at times, it was it was just a fun product to watch. Tommy Lloyd feels like a continuation of Lute. Obviously different dudes. I get that. But this feels far more like the Arizona basketball that I grew up watching and that you were covering.
Yeah, I mean, it's from a media point of view, it's never going to be like it was under Lute. But it's not Tommy Lloyd's fault at all. It's just the way of the world, right? We're not going to have open practices and weekly, basically free-for-all interview sessions where the guys are out in the court and we just can walk around and talk to whoever we want and get our stories that nobody else has. Those days are gone. But I think the thing that is similar is that just the way Tommy carries himself and the way his teams play, they play with joy, right? I mean, you can say, oh, they play fast. Well, yeah, they play fast, which leads to them playing with joy. It makes them interesting and fun to watch. So if we got back into this is just a much easier team to root for. And I'll kind of combine the two things. Now that I'm back at PHNX Sports, after a few years away from the kind of the daily reporting, writing on the Wildcats, in that period, I started to kind of transition into being a fan because, I'm an Arizona alum, I should be rooting for my school. And what I found was, of course, wins are important, but I want to root for people I like. I'm not necessarily going to be like totally rooting for the school just because they have Arizona on the front of their jerseys or whatever. I want to root for people that I think deserve to be rooted on. And that's where I really appreciate Tommy Lloyd. I'm appreciating Jed Fisch at that point. And getting back to our quarterback discussion, that's what I really like about Noah Fifita. I really want him. It's just easier to root for Noah Fifita than Jaden Delora. Just is, in my opinion.
Sure. And when you watch Tommy Lloyd too, this is the kind of guy that I think I think Tommy Lloyd gets it in the grand scheme of things too. I mean, he has fun out there. He can be intense, but he's not swearing just to swear and go off and, do all of this. Again, he can be intense, but it's not the over the top stuff. And he gives his players freedom. Like every year with Sean Miller, we always heard about, well, we're going to run it this year. We're going to run, we're going to get up and down. And it absolutely never happened. I'll never forget Tommy Lloyd, one of his introductory quotes. He said, we're going to run not just because it sounds cool, but because it's the best way to win games. And again, has the tournament success hasn't been there yet. Totally get it. But again, this still feels more like what I saw. And I don't know. Have I told you the Khalid Reeves, Damon Stoudemire story? I'm sure I have.
You probably have, but I've probably forgotten.
All right, I'll say it again because it's good. Yeah. All right. This is back when practices were open. You could go in, and I know that's a foreign concept now, but you could just walk into practice back in the day. This was during the 93-94 Khalid Damon season. And I can't remember why, but Damon was playing point guard on one team. Khalid was playing point guard on the other. And remember, like if you were at practice, Lute would always be sitting up on the stands between the two teams right there, while it would be Jesse Evans and like Phil Johnson coaching, whatever the case may be. So Khalid brings the ball up to half court, runs the ball up to half court, and then he looks over. I think it was at Jesse Evans looking for a play. Lute stops it. And I wish I could do the Kelvin Efon impression, but I can't do it. So, and he stops it. Everybody's waiting for him. He makes his way down to the court. And he's saying this to a guy who's in the middle of averaging almost 25 points per game this season. And he says to him, he goes, Khalid, have I done my job coaching you? And Khalid, who was a man of very few words, as you know, said, yeah. And he said, if I've done my job, why are you running the ball to half court to look over for a play? And then he says, and Khalid says, well, I don't know. And he says, just go, just play. And then he went back up there. Khalid did not look over to the sideline for a play the rest of the entire practice. Neither did Damon. But that's what I'm talking about as far as just letting your guys go, knowing you have better players and letting them express themselves. We haven't seen that, obviously. Even my guy KO did not allow that to happen. We haven't seen that since Lute, and now we see it with Tommy Lloyd to a certain extent.
So you're saying that coaches don't have to call a timeout and glare at someone if they throw the ball away? Don't have to.
Correct.
They could, in theory, just let them continue to play because they've been coached to play really well. And you trust them to do what they've been coached to do.
That story, though, will always stick with me just because of the gravitas of who it was. And this was all due respect. This wasn't Jason Ritchie bringing the ball to half court and looking at Jesse Evans. This was Khalid Reeves, arguably the best shooting guard in school history. And I think there's just something to be said for actually letting players play. And I think that's a very refreshing manner. And like I said, I just like how he goes about it. I know that you agree with this, Anthony Gimino.
I do totally agree with it. Were you expecting me to disagree?
Well, you might say, man, this Anthony Gimino, he's a really chill guy. This Mike Luke, this is a spaz. He's all over the place. Guess what Mike Luke might need? OGs. Check out our friends at OG's Brands for yourself and try one or a few of their delicious flavors. Check them out across all socials at OG's Brands and online at ogsbrands.com to find them at a local dispensary near you. Must be 21 years or up to enjoy responsibly. The fruits, the red apple, the watermelon, the peach, etc. All right, real quick before we sign off, Arizona is picked to win the conference this year, Anthony Gimino. Do you back this? Are you backing the A with that pick?
They did not ask me to vote in this preseason media poll. If they had, you did. I assume you picked Arizona, yes. Yeah.
I'm backing the A. I agree.
Oh, I would have picked Arizona. Yeah, I mean, we all know SC's close, and then you got Oregon and UCLA, et cetera, et cetera. You know what? As you would say, I will have to give the media some credit because I was not expecting. I mean, we know Kylan Boswell. We know the potential because we watched every game and we're following the team real closely. I'm impressed that the rest of the media picked up on that because here's a dude who didn't necessarily play a whole lot until later in the year and really didn't play well until about halfway through the year, which was perfectly understandable because he was a freshman coming off the foot injury, etc. But people, I was surprised he was named to the preseason all-conference team. And I think that's legit. Right. But I just thought it'd be really hard for somebody who really wasn't following Arizona closely to make that projection. But I think that speaks to the attention that Tommy brings to the program. And I think it speaks to the trust that other people from the outside have in his coaching ability, which leads them to I think if I'm going to pick a team number one, I'm going to go with Tommy over Andy Enfield. I think I can trust Tommy a little bit more with that.
I agree. Yeah. Even though I like Andy Enfield, I think Andy Enfield gets a bad rap. I like Andy Enfield, but Enfield, you've
spent plenty of time rapping him.
No, but I like Andy Enfield, though. Overall, I like Andy Enfield. Okay. If John Tesh was a college basketball coach with a lot of talent, he would be Andy Enfield. That's exactly. It's just kind of even keel. For USC, though, he's good.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Was he better than that other guy?
Yeah, we're not going there. All right, Anthony, when's your next article coming out? Preview it real quick for the peeps.
Well, I think you should go on Go PHNX right now. Because it's up.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Check it out. That's called a tease right there. All right, Anthony. I know you got to get to bed and because you got or not get to bed for your nap. But on that note, though, he's Anthony Gimino. I'm Mike Luke. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.